Hello there, you're watching All 24 News live from Algiers. Next are the headlines. Zionist army shot and killed a Palestinian teenager while extreme right Zionist firebrand incurred Al-Aqsa Mosque in a blatant violation of international legality resolutions. Also coming up, Moscow and Kiev are at odds over Russian military death toll. While the Kremlin says 63 Russian soldiers died, Ukraine claims higher toll. And British rail workers kicked off the new year with a week-long strike on Tuesday, impacting millions of commuters. And you will be also watching in our news, large crowd lined the streets of Santos as the coffin of Brazilian soccer legend Pelé was transported through the city on Tuesday before his burial. Hello again and welcome to the program. Fast in our topical news, the Zionist army has shot and killed a Palestinian teenager during a raid on the city of Bethlehem in the southern occupied West Bank. The Palestinian Ministry of Health said the 15-year-old Adam Issam Shakrayad was killed after he was shot in the chest on Tuesday morning. The killing took place during a Zionist raid on the Dashish refugee camp. It included dozens of armored vehicles, according to local media. Zionist forces arrested several residents during the raid as well.
The child Adam Ayad was directly targeted by occupation snipers. It's a murderous occupation that targets our children and young people permanently every month, every week. Every day there is a martyr, there is an injured person, there is a raid.
The extreme right Zionist firebrand has incurred Al-Quds sacred Al-Aqsa Mosque compound for the first time since becoming a minister, angering thus Palestinians who see it as a provocation. The incursion came days after he took office as National Security Minister, a position that gives the religious hardliner significant powers over the police. Palestinian authorities see the incursion as blatant and shameless provocation, which could result in deadly violence and escalate tensions in the area. The incursion faced a wave of international criticism and wrath, which was directed to the Zionist government.
إن اقتحام الوزير الإسرائيلي بن غفير.
The incursion of the Zionist minister to the Holy Aqsa Mosque this morning is a big challenge for the feelings of the Palestinian people. For this concern, we call our people who failed the conspiracy of Gates to face this kind of incursions which aim to make Al-Aqsa Mosque a Jewish temple, and this is a violation of all regulations, ethics, and international agreements and laws, and the Israeli promise to the American president. The new Israeli government assumes the entire responsibility over the consequences of its aggression on our cities, villages, and camps.
And in the same context, a statement from the Algerian Foreign Affairs Ministry said Algeria strongly condemned on Tuesday the provocative act of a Zionist official who stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque in blatant violation of international legality resolutions and in manifest contempt for Muslims and Christians around the world, calling on the UN Security Council to assume its responsibilities vis-à-vis the Palestinian people. The statement reads, quote, "This condemnable act, which comes on top of a series of systematic violations committed by the forces of the occupation against the Palestinian people, their properties and their holy places, are as part of a very dangerous expansionist plan, confirms once more the imperative to provide the necessary protection to the Palestinian people and to put an end to these criminal practices which undermine the peace process in the Middle East. Algeria calls on the UN Security Council to assume its responsibilities vis-à-vis the Palestinian people and reiterates its inalienable position in favor of this brotherly people with a view to recovering their legitimate rights, at the head of which is the establishment of independent state on the 1967 borders with Al-Quds as its capital," end quote. To Western Sahara now. All of the issues and topics brought up and submitted by the Preparatory Committee for the 16th Congress of the Polisario Front have been approved in full by the National Secretariat of the Polisario Front. The National Secretariat stated in a statement that it had unanimously concluded a written contribution to the national discussion on the occasion of the 16th Congress, following lengthy discussions and remembering the challenges ahead. This statement marked the conclusion of the work of its final 8th ordinary session. The document submitted to the Congress included the National Secretariat's unified position on every issue and topic. During his meeting with the Provisional President Council of Judges, Tunisian President Kais Saied reaffirms the need to purify the country from all those who seized its capabilities and tried to infiltrate its institutions. The meeting also dealt with the concern of all parties for the smooth functioning of the public service of the judiciary, as the head of state stressed that the judicial function is the most important job.
It's necessary to purify the country from everyone who sees its capabilities and seeks today to infiltrate its institutions in alliance with any party to reach his goals, and believes that he is above any accountability or punishment.
The head of the Libyan National Unity Government, Abdelhamid Dbeiba, stated that his country is in a building phase, and all parties must agree on constitutional basis leading to elections. Dbeiba, during a meeting with the officials, confirmed that whoever the Libyan people choose through the elections is the one who rules Libya, adding that the country does not need to ruminate about the transitional stages or talk about division.
We need a constitutional basis to guide us. If someone is not able to continue, someone else comes after him to continue. We are expecting that our youth takes the lead. Why are we blocking the road in all councils? I have said it over and over again. We want stability and a constitution. And whoever comes to the top with a constitution and election, we will give him the top job and we will have achieved something.
Still in Africa, and to a different development, 28 bodies killed by gunfire were discovered on New Year's Eve in northwestern Burkina Faso. According to a government official, the investigation is ongoing to provide details about the perpetrators or motive for the homicide. In the same context, Ouagadougou asks Paris' ambassador to leave the country as soon as possible after the government spokesman confirmed that Luc Alad of Paris was no longer trustworthy and called the country's security crisis a civil war in talks with French lawmakers. The European Union plans to start the process of withdrawing diplomatic immunity from 2 more members of the European Parliament who are also involved in the corruption scandal that erupted in December. The MPs in question could be identified next month following some legal maneuvers. However, 2 sources close to the investigation told Reuters the 2 MPs were Belgian Mark Trabella and Italian Andrea Cozzoloni. Daylight revealed the devastating damage done to the building in Makivka hit by Ukrainian missiles. The Kremlin said 63 Russian soldiers died in the attack in the Donetsk region. Ukraine later took credit for the hit and claimed the toll was much higher. Here's Osama Ayadi.
Dispute is still taking place as the Russia-Ukraine conflict is witnessing higher tension. This comes particularly after the Ukrainian forces reached the Russian territory with their strikes, which were acknowledged by the Russian Federation. However, this is not the main point for the dispute. The number of dead soldiers have been argued about in many occasions shortly after the strikes took place. Ukraine's defense ministry said as many as 400 Russians had been killed during the strikes, while Russian officials who did not immediately respond to the request for comment stated that the number of killed soldiers did not exceed 63, denying all the Ukrainian allegations, although allegations made by pro-war bloggers said casualties were far higher.
As a result of the strike by 4 rockets with high explosive warheads against the temporary deployment point, 63 Russian servicemen were killed. All necessary assistance and support will be provided to the relatives and friends of the servicemen who have been killed.
It did not take long after Ukrainians reached the Russian territory as the Russian army could revenge for the attack. Several strikes have hit the Ukrainian regions. 10 explosions were heard in the center of Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, soon after the Ukrainian officials warned of another large-scale missile attack by Moscow.
Протягом минулої доби противник завдав 6
Over the past day, the enemy launched 6 missile and 52 airstrikes, 77 attacks from multiple launch rocket systems. The enemy inflicted all 6 missile and 30 airstrikes on civilian infrastructure. In addition, all 27 Shahed 136 UAVs used by the enemy were shot down by the Ukrainian defense forces.
застосував противник, збиті силами оборони України.
As air raid sirens sounded across the country, Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said one of the blasts occurred in an area of residential buildings in the capital Solomyansky district, and that there were explosions in 2 other parts of the city. The year 2023 seems to witness higher tension between the two countries. Further escalation and more deaths are what makes the visible scene of the conflict in Eastern Europe, and it seems that repositioning and change of strategies are what makes the nature of war in the next days.
According to data released on Monday by gas giant Gazprom, Russian gas shipments to countries outside of a group of former Soviet republics fell by 45.5% in 2022. Gazprom said in a statement that exports outside the Commonwealth of Independent States totaled 100.9 billion cubic meters compared to 185.1 billion in 2021. Still with energy, the National Gas Company of Bulgaria, Bulgargas, and the National Gas Company of Turkey, BOTAS, signed a long-term agreement on January 3rd that grant Bulgargas access to the terminals for liquefied natural gas in Turkey and to the gas network there, almost entirely dependent on gas or Russian gas before Moscow stopped supplying it in April because Sofia wouldn't accept ruble payments. Bulgaria is now looking for alternatives.
13 yıl olacak ve yıllık yaklaşık 1,5
The duration of this contract is 13 years. During this period, 1.5 billion cubic meters of natural gas per year can be transferred. As I previously mentioned, this agreement will increase the security of gas supply for Bulgaria and for Europe as well.
Efes Sarıyor olmak üzere LNG terminalimiz.
Still with the energy file, oil prices tumbled 3.5% in volatile trade on Tuesday, pressured by weak demand data from China, a gloomy economic outlook, and a stronger US dollar. Brent futures for March delivery fell $3.03 to $82.88 a barrel. US crude fell $2.81 to $77.45 per barrel. In early trade, both contracts had risen more than $1 a barrel.
There is plenty of reasons for concerns here. The China COVID-19 situation and the fear of recession in the foreseeable future is putting pressure on markets.
And in a related matter, China's foreign ministry on Tuesday said some countries' COVID-19 entry restrictions targeting China lack scientific basis and are simply unreasonable. Islam Sid reports.
China warned on Tuesday that it will take countermeasures based on the principle of reciprocity against countries that targeted Chinese travelers without scientific basis. This act comes after many countries imposed tough measures on travelers from China amid its nationwide COVID outbreak and the possibility that new variants may spread.
The entry restrictions adopted by some countries targeting China lack scientific basis, and some excessive practices are even more unacceptable. We're firmly opposed to attempts to manipulate the COVID-19 measures for political purposes, and will take countermeasures based on the principle of reciprocity.
The European Center for Disease Prevention and Control had insisted that the situation in China did not pose an immediate overall threat to health. The European Union has offered China assistance in dealing with its COVID-19 crisis, including the donation of vaccines, in an effort to coordinate how should checking come in for any new variants.
Chinese counterparts to offer the EU's solidarity and support, and this includes public health expertise as well as through variant-adapted EU vaccine donation.
Prior to January 8th, Chinese authorities declared that foreign visitors would no longer require quarantine when arriving to China, allowing Chinese citizens to travel. China eased its strict zero-COVID policy in December to cope with the virus, but the decision has put the country under increasing scrutiny at home and abroad and prompted some countries to impose travel curbs as cases dramatically surged and mortality rate increased in the country.
President Joe Biden said on Monday that the U.S. was not in a discussion to implement nuclear exercises with South Korea. Biden's comment contradicted remarks by his South Korean counterpart, who said earlier via statement that both countries were in talks on joint exercises involving U.S. nuclear assets.
I just want to be very clear, just to reiterate what the President said yesterday. We're not discussing joint nuclear exercises. The ROK is a non-nuclear weapon state, so just want to be very clear on what the President was saying, and it is very much how it stands. But following their meeting in Cambodia, President Biden and President Un tasked their teams to plan for an effective, coordinated response to a range of scenarios, including nuclear use by North Korea.
U.S. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy was dealt a historic defeat in first-round voting Tuesday to become House Speaker, sending the new Congress into opening day tumult as conservative colleagues opposed his leadership. Here's our own Zara Farjani with the report.
For the first time in nearly a century, the United States House of Representatives has failed to elect a speaker in the first round of voting, as Republican Kevin McCarthy fell short of securing a majority in the chamber to succeed Nancy Pelosi. Republicans narrowly won control of the chamber in November's midterm elections, but several right-wing legislators of McCarthy's own party refused to back him during the new House's first meeting on Tuesday.
If you go to the American people and ask them if Congress is doing a good job, if they like the way things are run in Washington, D.C., you're probably going to get a big hell no. We want to change the way things are done here. We didn't offer up a personal wish list. We were told to provide lists of what members need to be seated on what committees. And we did exactly that.
The Speaker must acquire a majority of the votes, excluding absent lawmakers and those who vote present. On Tuesday, McCarthy needed 218 votes, but he only received 202, with 19 Republicans voting against him.
We said, we can get you to 218 with this. He stood up and he shook our hands and he said, I can't do it, or I won't do it. And here we are. And here we are.
This is about electing a person to sit in the speaker chair so that we can all get to work. And out of 222 Republicans, let me remind everyone, there's 218 votes to get something passed. That means all of us are powerful, every single faction in the Republican Party.
A second round of voting was underway. However, the standoff would leave the House largely paralyzed and could force lawmakers to consider another candidate. Incoming Majority Leader Steve Scalise and Conservative Leader Jim Jordan are seen as possibilities.
British rail workers kicked off the new year with a week-long strike on Tuesday, disrupting the return to work for millions of commuters in the latest bout of industrial action to hit the country. Here's Sofian Kinturi's report.
Commuters got back to work on Tuesday. After the Christmas holiday were advised not to travel, as tens of thousands of British rail workers planned a fresh round of strikes that will disrupt services all the week. Due to the dispute over pay and working conditions, around half of UK's railway lines are closed and only 1/5 of services are active.
So what we need to hear now from the government is exactly what it is they're going to propose to us. At the moment, they got themselves into a position before Christmas where we were making progress with the train operating companies, and on one Sunday afternoon before a set of strike action they decided to torpedo those talks by putting in conditions in the documentation that they know that we and the other unions can never accept.
While drivers in the ASLEF union, who will strike on Thursday, RMT members were on strike on Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday and Saturday. There are no train services in many locations, including the majority of Scotland and Wales. Transport Secretary Mark Harper has renewed his call to the RMT union members to stop the strikes and to sit on the negotiating table.
I think in the new year it's time for the RMT to get off the picket line, back round the negotiating table, and ministers will do what we can to facilitate them coming to a deal with the employers. I want to get these rail disputes sorted out for the benefit of the travelling public.
Due to its consequences, including lower productivity, which results in lower profits and affects the nation's economy, striking is sometimes the only legal option left. Workers in the United Kingdom are on strike in order to demand better pay and working conditions. Inflation in the country hit a 41-year high of 11.1% in October, as household energy costs and rising food prices continue to put pressure on household budgets.
Still in the UK, Wales' largest health board has declared a critical incident as it faces unprecedented demand. The Betsy Cadwallader University Health Board covering North Wales said patients face long waits for emergency care due to flu and COVID cases. Routine appointments have been postponed at hospitals in North Wales on Tuesday in response. Separately, Swansea Bay Health Board told patients not to go to A&E unless it is a life-threatening situation. For more news making headlines globally, let's follow the news in brief.
On his first day in office, Lula da Silva have received leaders from Latin America and Europe to greet him and express their hope that Brazil will play a significant role in the world.
Almost 4 out of 5 new cars sold in Norway last year were battery-powered, with Tesla the top-selling brand for the second year in a row, seeking to become the first nation to end the sale of petrol and diesel cars by 2025. Oil produced in Norway has until now exempted battery-powered fully electric vehicles from taxes imposed on rivals using internal combustion engines. The share of new electric vehicles rose to 79.3% in 2022 from 65% in 2021 and from a mere 2.9% a decade ago.
Thousands of people and Kurdish organizations, including the Kurdish Women's Movement, gathered in Paris to say goodbye to the 3 Kurds on Tuesday, who died in the attack on December 23rd. The victims' remains were removed from the forensic lab and transported to Palace de Villiers.
American football star Damar Hamlin is in a critical condition after suffering cardiac arrest during a primetime U.S. National Football League game. The Buffalo Bills player fell to the ground after colliding with an opponent. He received on-field medical attention for more than 30 minutes before being taken to a local hospital.
A large crowd lined the streets of Santos as the coffin of Brazilian soccer great player Pelé was transported through the city on Tuesday before his burial. The body of Pelé was moved by fire truck from Vila Belmiro Stadium, where many people, including newly inaugurated President Luis Inácio Lula da Silva, paid their final respects.
When he was at his moments of glory, when he met the Queen of England, when he won an award, Pelé was the same guy as when he was given an interview or met a group of children. Pelé is a very special character. We can't compare Pelé to anyone, because there is no one that can be compared with Pelé as a player and as a human being, due to his polite behavior.
And finally in our news, the Algerian national football team manager Abdelmajid Bougara revealed a list of 28 players in order to participate in the African Championship for locals, scheduled to take place in Algeria from January 13th to February 4th, where he preferred to rely on the same composition that he worked with during the last months of preparations and to adjust the last technical and tactical touches. The local Greens will play their last friendly fixture next Saturday against Ghana at Miloud Hadfi Stadium in Oran province. Well, we reached the end. For more, visit our social media platforms. For now, thank you for keeping it here on All 24 News, and bye.